Hi YouTube, Abby here. Today's video I'll be talking about the Sombra rework and why I personally think it was a success. However, there is a little but in there because there are some problems about her that weren't necessarily solved, although I think that has more to do with the current state of the game and what's meta, and less on Sombra and what's going on with her. So first of all, before we talk about the Sombra rework, what has been changed, what has been done to rework her playstyle, we need to address the problem with Sombra that was happening in lower elos, basically casual levels of play, and Sombra at higher levels of play. So I'm going to try and dumb this down and keep it simple so it's easy for everybody to understand and not write you a book on, how Sombra was being played everywhere. So, it's easier to digest and we can just keep moving with this video. Sombra at the highest levels of plays was basically an EMP bot. She was also really, really good in how coordinated teams could take advantage of the target that she hacked. They would delete that target and move on to win the team fight from that point on. She was a very valuable character, and we even saw her during times like GOATs. She faded out in double shield meta because for obvious reasons. And then she saw play here and there throughout the Overwatch 2 life, and then she became a little bit more solid throughout the last year at the highest levels of plays, right? In the lower levels of plays, Sombra is extremely misunderstood and she's played completely wrong. In lower levels of play, because people are often very, very scared to play and make plays and all that type of stuff and unwilling to coordinate, Sombra is like this perma-invis assassin in the backline that doesn't really do any assassinating because the Sombra player is terrified of ever exiting invis and sitting there with 500 damage per game, wondering why nothing is changing. So I know, that's a little meme, but that aside, that does happen more often than not in these lower elo games. The Sombra players are trying to do their hack and shoot combo. It doesn't work out in their favor. They're forced to translocate back to the health pack that they hacked, and from that point on, rinse and repeat that process, get EMP by the end of the game, use that EMP when all four teammates have died, and then sit there and wonder why is Sombra bad, right? So there's a big, big disconnect in the way that Sombra was being played here and there. However, there was a playstyle that did work in these lower level games, was that you lock Sombra, you did your level best to get a pick on the backline, or somebody on your team did get a pick in the backline, and you basically spawn count this person. This became very, very popular in lower levels of play. I'm sure you guys have seen videos around YouTube where people do that to troll other players. And sometimes it was towards other squishies as well. And of course, if you were playing support and if you were on something like, let's say, Mercy Moira, or even Zen, it was hard to kind of fight back against that Sombra player who had such a decent amount of advantage against you, right? Not completely unheard of that you can turn it around, but it was decently strong in the right hands of a good Sombra player, understanding how to isolate that person in that area, and just lock them down. So this became frustrating. So the Sombra rants that came from high levels of play were very different. Sombra rants that came from lower levels of play were very different. However, overall, the picture of Sombra was that she was kind of an EMP bot. A lot of her strength came from EMP and the way that it was basically a team fight win at higher levels of play. At low levels of play, we already spoke about the fact that she was a bit here and there with how EMP was being used. And, every now and then you did have a Sombra that could, understand how the character played. But of course, that's every now and then it wasn't as consistent. And speaking of consistency, that is one of Sombra's biggest problems too, was that Sombra relied very much on hack. And because outside of that, she was very inconsistent at doing effective damage, especially against the massive healing creep in the game. She has but previous Sombra didn't really have the biggest or highest damage numbers or pressure that she brought. A lot of that pressure was kind of locked into hack. So that's what we were kind of left with. So the idea became was, how do we approach this new Sombra? What do we change? What do we do about her? And the new Sombra rework basically removed the way the translocator functions, so you cannot place it down on a hacked health pack and kind of like constantly play around it. The idea of this playstyle was to make her very, very active, right? To make her a lot more engaging in a team fight and give her tools to really help apply pressure, because if there was one thing that Sombra sucked with, was punishing people that were out of position in the team fight, simply because, again, it was easy for her to feel pressured and get out, and the playstyle was very passive. It never got the chance to be aggressive. And so what they did was they got rid of the opportunist passive, and we got this new ability on the shift. And the stealth became the passive instead. The stealth became the passive instead. Sorry, excuse me. And the shift key now became this new ability called Virus, and Virus applies 100 damage over time, 100 DPS damage over time ability on a target. And when you pair it with hack, it can just, and when you're shooting the target, it can really melt hella fast, right? So I have some gameplay in the background that you'll probably see this happen here and there. But if there's one thing that I can kind of talk about Sombra is, number one, I believe the rework was a success from the perspective that it changes the way that she plays the game. I will talk a little bit about this in just a moment. But it did not make her OP. I see a lot of videos going around that are saying Sombra's overpowered. There's a lot of videos going around that are saying Sombra's underpowered. And to the people that are saying that it's overpowered, I don't think it's overpowered. I think it's actually very fairly balanced. And to the people that are complaining, just up your APM, up your awareness, and just pressure her, tickle her, and she's forced to kind of get out. Like, her old playstyle is a little bit dead. You can still do it here and there towards unattentive teams, but you know, it's not what you kind of want to go for. And that brings me to my next point about Sombra feeling underpowered. Unfortunately, you know, there are moments with Sombra where you can, to a certain extent, mimic this old school, like, go in, playstyle, get out quickly. Like, she reminds me a lot of old Doomfist on DPS, where you kind of commit all your resources into a fight and then get out. So in this case, you go in, you hack, you shift, you burst down a target, and then you quickly use E to relocate. Now, in one of my 𝐒𝐿𝐻 games that you can see in the background, I'm kind of doing this, and there are moments where it works, there are moments it doesn't work. And when it's not working, when you realize that your limit has been tested, you kind of want to just play Sombra like a Mei Reaper style, where you're pretty much sticking with your tank. You're holding these good positions where you can get a good hack off. You drop down, you burst the target down with your tank, and then you kind of, you know, try again of this whole you know, dynamic playstyle of, okay, one moment I'm kind of playing a little bit more flanky, the other moment I'm kind of doing like a Mei Reaper style of sticking with the team. So I like that a lot because it adds like more flavor to Sombra. You're not just doing one thing at all the times. You're kind of trying to balance out this, like, okay, let me pressure the backline like this, let me kind of pressure the front line like this. So you're always active. So in terms of making Sombra active and everything, they succeeded. You know, thumbs up. Like, I think it's very good. But Sombra, you know, she's not underpowered simply because I would say this meta that we're in and the healing creep that we're in, it doesn't allow Sombra to thrive. And we're seeing that a lot with even some characters like Tracer, Genji, that these characters that try to do these wombo combos, or like I spray you down and melee to confirm a kill on you, they're just kind of awkward right now simply because the healing is so high in the game, it doesn't really allow them to flourish. I don't think any of these characters, in particular Sombra, Tracer, Genji, need any buffs or nerfs. I think that they're fine where they are for now. But what I would like to see is, man, honestly, the problem comes back to support. We need to tone down the healing in this game and then look at how the damage roll performs, what is doing well, what isn't, and then tone damage down and then leave the game as is for a little bit, add new heroes and see what happens. Because at the moment, I will say that Blizzard completely failed in changing the meta against Bastion Torb, being the meta DPS line, and they're incredibly easy to play. And unfortunately, because Sombra has to constantly get out of invis to do anything now, Torbjorn's turn pressure onto you is extremely hardcore in the way it just wants you to get out. Like, once it starts pressuring you, you don't have this 1.5 second to really put the pressure, put the combo that you want, and you're just kind of out of there. Trying to do that and commit in that fight, you get yourself killed because you have turn pressuring you, Torb presses E, and then his right-click shotgun machine gun that he's got bursts you down. So these are the characters that I'm seeing a lot in ranked. Now, obviously, the footage in the background is from Quick Play. Unfortunately, there was an update with the patch, so I didn't get the footage that I wanted to showcase of this. So for now, just, you know, watch this footage. It's playing into the points that I made earlier about her variety playstyle that she's got going for herself. There are moments against certain comps where you kind of do feel like you're not doing anything. I'm not going to lie. And again, it's one of those things of the building creep, the high healing creep. Like, it just kind of feels like you're forced to play this EMP bot, or this just babysit the enemy tank with your tank. Like, just, okay, this tank comes in or they back out, we just hack them, we walk on them, and then I can go in and play with my tank. So she just kind of like feels like this character that wants to be with her tank, and if she's able to like apply this pressure and the enemy team is kind of getting staggered here and there, you can start playing, you know, a little bit more flankery and do your best. But again, if they've got the high heals, they've got the turns running around, it's very difficult to play that playstyle. So, you know, I would say Sombra is actually very mid-tier. She's okay. She's not OP. She's not underpowered. I think what we can call Sombra is that she was a success in that they made her healthier to play, healthier to deal with. You can chase her a lot better now with characters on tank, damage, and support. So this old school playstyle, that, you know, if people do try it, of this overcommitment to trying to be this backline assassin, it doesn't work. It gets the Sombra player killed more often than not and gives you a free 5v4. And, you know, lots of players are catching on to the 5v4 style, and then they just walk in on your team, and it's kind of on you that because you saw through that fight, right? So there is that. And not to mention that in most levels of play, you know, you're going to notice that there's a lot of people that just don't follow up on your EMP. Honestly, in some of my games, maybe in the background you'll see it too, there's a moment where I just kind of felt like every time I EMP'd, my team just disengaged. I don't understand why. There was like one fight where they did. I believe on Circuit Royale, when I EMP'd, they just backed out. And then, in Adensburg, the Eichenwald map, sorry, they were able to do what I needed them to do whenever I EMP. So that was nice. And you can use EMP to shut down different ultimates and all that type of stuff. So knowing the interactions is important. Same with Hack as well. But overall, my perspectives on Sombra right now is I don't see her as oppressive. I don't see her as underwhelmed and needs buffs. I actually think she's on that level of healthiness that we are trying to find for all the DPS characters. And honestly, I want to see Bastion and Torbjorn bring down. And I feel like there's something that Blizzard needs to understand. My final thoughts with this video is Bastion and Torbjorn are two characters. Like, yeah, there's other characters that are cheesy and easy to play that we can talk about, that we've talked about on this channel many times. But if there's one thing we learned from this horrible experiment of poke meta, Bastion, Torbjorn, and Orisa should never be allowed to be meta. That's just like, these three in particular, the amount of frustration they bring into the game when you pair it with high healing, it just feels like another GOATS comp that you cannot go through. DPS loses agency, support ends up becoming the playmaking role, and tanks just feel like, okay, I just gotta stay alive, and if I try to playmake, I'll get blown up by the enemy supports. So it's kind of, we're still in this weird meta, and honestly, it's made me quit ranked for this season. I was really looking forward to it. The characters that I played felt a lot better in this season. Echo and Genji, Hanzo felt really good, but again, there were maps where if the team was just like, if the enemy team knew how to play that comp better and understand how to just, take the engagements, it really just felt like we had to mirror, that comp. So for Sombra, great rework, although I want to see her in different metas. I want to see her in dive, in rush, in poke. Sorry, not poke. In poke, she's just awkward. So in these dive brawl comps, rush comps, I want to see Sombra being played more with characters like Ryan and Ram, and see how it goes. Obviously, it also doesn't help that right now Zarya is still by far one of the meta tanks with Orisa and Zarya, and both those two tanks can, to a certain extent, not only ignore Sombra, but are also decent at kind of pressuring her and shutting her down. So at the moment, I think, like, for what it's worth from the games that we were all able to take away, Sombra is pretty fine. More or less is kind of the same, but has a little bit more opportunity to play make. But with the state of support and what is the meta tanks, she just feels underwhelming. Like characters, other DPS characters that basically aren't Bastion, Torb. Like, you can do something on them, but you cannot play make like you should be, because again, high healing, too many buildables, etc., etc. It makes it really hard to judge and evaluate what's going on. But for now, in my personal opinion, I think Sombra's fine. I think it was a great rework. Pat on the back to the developers. When they do something right, I will call it like it is. When they do something wrong, I will call it like it is. I'm a fair man. I believe in fairness. 50-50, give and take. If they do something right, we should thumbs up them for it. If they do something wrong, we thumbs them down for it. So this, for Sombra, good, thumbs up. Let's get a balance patch. Let's get Orisa, Bastion, Torbjorn, and the high healing in the game. Particularly, let's start looking at Baptiste, Iliari, a little bit of Kiriko, Brig, and Life Weaver here and there. But, in Kiriko's case, it's just the Suzu and the immortality that comes with it that we need to look at. But, if we can do all of that, then I actually think Overwatch 2 is going to be in a very, very good spot, very enjoyable to play. We're just almost there. We're like 80% of the way done through the race. If we could just hit the 20% mark and not go like 5-10 steps backwards from this point on, we can reach that good game state where people get rewarded for their skill. Niche characters can be played by specialists that can make them work, and overall variety will be there in the game, so they will be able to fulfill their vision of, you can pick what you want and play what you want. That's just the way I see it. Of course, like, that can never be achieved to 100% perspective, but we can push it to 90-95%, and that will be okay. With that being said, everybody, that's going to be it for this video. If you want to support the channel for free, as always, hit like, because it helps with the algorithm. Subscribe to stick around for more content, because I got the best Sombra guide for beginners, obviously, coming very soon, by tomorrow, the day after. Hopefully by tomorrow, because I want to do video uploads every day except the weekends, because I need a break sometimes. Anyways, with that being said, I will see you in the next one.